Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, where we share stories of how businesses of all sizes are using technology to transform their business. And yes, we also share startup stories to help others on a similar journey too. But today, I want to focus on everybody listening that has a great idea or a problem that they want to solve, but just don't know how to grow their own idea into a startup. So my big question to you all is, do you have an idea for an app, a website, or a tech product that could make a difference in an industry but unsure where to start? If you answered yes, well, today's podcast is just for you, because I invited the guys from Nova onto my Daily Tech podcast to talk about how they provide mentorship, investment to take you from idea to successful startup. Now, today's guest is Andrew Dean from Nova, and he's a true believer in the power of dreams and likes nothing better than chasing them. Sounds like my kind of guy, so buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Liverpool here in the UK so we can speak with Andrew Dean from Nova. So, massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Dean, or Andy Dean. My role here is Head of Partnerships at We Are Nova, which means that I'm responsible for two main things. Quite obviously, partnerships, whether they are with other institutions or other places like Nova, or I'm involved in actually trying to find good founders or good co-founders to start businesses with.
Excellent. Now, my understanding is that Nova provides startup mentorship, investment, and a full delivery team required to take anyone from idea to a thriving tech startup business. But can you just help set the scene a little and tell any wannabe startup founders listening the kind of problems that you're aiming to solve here for them?
Absolutely. There's a couple of key problems. The first one is that at the very beginning of your journey, you really are kind of on your own. So when you come up with an idea, or as we like to say, a problem worth solving, and try and get that to a position where someone will back you, there's a lot of no man's land, the valley of death kind of situation. And to be fair, there are people out there, there's angel investors, but they quite rightly would like to see a couple of things from you, which is a team and a thing that you've made something. But there's actually quite a bit of time before that where no one really will help you. You might get you some friends and family will give you some money, but no one really supports you during that time. So the first thing we wanted to do was help people at that stage. So I think in the industry they call it kind of vaporware, but the point where you have an idea. The second thing is that even if you do get some investment and some money, unfortunately, the chances of you making this a success are quite slim. There's loads of different surveys and reports out there, but most people use this kind of 10% success, 90% failure rate. And if you dig into that, there seems to be some trends that happen. The first one is building something nobody wants. The second one is failing to execute sales and marketing. The third one, having the wrong co-founders. The fourth one, employing poorly. And then the last one is chasing investment, not customers. And all Nova have basically done is said, okay, can we help in the very early stages? And can we eliminate those key 5 areas? Because they account for around 80% of the reasons why these things fail over the first 3 years. And that's exactly what we've been doing, is allowing people to succeed in that kind of high failure rate, allowing them to get help early. And that help comes in with some investment that kind of buys you the Nova team for 12 months.
So why is it so hard to get a tech startup off the ground? You've mentioned pretty key areas there, but even I would suspect even if people can overcome them, they're still going to run into problems, aren't they?
They are, yeah. I mean, there's a number of different areas and reasons why I think it's difficult. You know, you're not necessarily a technically minded person, and you're going to bring something into the world and you don't really understand it. That's hard. So you've got to find somebody who does, who's the techie who can actually deliver. And the other side of it is that we're all solution biased. We can't help it. You know, you see something, you think I can make that better, and the thing to make it better is my thing. I think people really underestimate the power of problem-based innovation and using those lean startup principles that Ash Maurya came up with in order to be able to analyze and understand a problem that's worth solving. And then there's just a growing business, employing people, getting the right people, understanding marketing, business, IP. It's just a lot to get your head around. That's very difficult. So I think it's a combination of all those, but it's those first two that seem to stump most people.
Absolutely. And especially around that, who helps you before you have a team, before you have a prototype, around that kind of area. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you help in that area and the kind of role that you play?
Yes. So we have a little program here that, like I say, runs for 12 months. But the first thing that we do is we ask people that if they think that Nova can help them, so they have an idea or a problem worth solving, but they need some help in some way, we'll say, apply on our website. We'll have a read of that. We might ask you to fill in some additional information. But if you have something that looks like it could be a good problem that's worth solving, and you as a person have some kind of domain knowledge or access to it, and what I mean by that is if I had an idea, let's say, for a driving app, but I am not a driving instructor and I have no access to driving instructors, it would be more difficult for me to be able to solve that problem. So we ask for somebody to either have direct domain expertise or indirect. If that's the case, they apply to Nova. We then spend some time, we're calling it mentoring, but it's actually coaching them for the first kind of 12 weeks to understand whether they can build a user panel and really prove they have a problem worth solving and a market that's actually a piece of tech could disrupt it. If they can do that, then they get a chance to kind of pitch. If they pitch and they're successful, some money is released, and that money that's released actually buys you the Nova team to basically run alongside you to now look for a solution and then to look for market fit, etc. So that's what, and those 5 key areas I was talking about before, we address all those as we're going along. So that's what we've been doing.
So why do you think we're seeing more pre-accelerators now? Is it all because of this growing problem that we've talked about?
It's a combination of things, I believe. And I wouldn't say that I was particularly any expert in this area. I think there's a lot of accelerators out there. We've kind of been awash with them. Some people think they're good things. Some people think they're not so good in terms of the value you get out of them. And I think it's probably true that there are some that are better than others. And I think a lot of those accelerators realize that they're not seeing as many things come to their accelerators as they would like, either because there's so many accelerators out there or because they're just kind of drying up in terms of the things that can arrive. Most accelerator programs, and I can't speak for all of them, but most of them want you to have a team and they want you to come with something. Then they can then accelerate that thing. I think they've realized that because of that shortage and because of that sort of demand that all these accelerators have, it's probably worthwhile becoming a pre-accelerator and trying to get things off the ground beforehand, which just happens to be naturally where we sit. If you wanted to describe us as anything, it would be a pre-accelerator.
Now, a few moments ago, you did mention one of the big problems, of course, is people that go out and make solutions to problems that don't even exist yet. So how do you actually validate a problem or validate an idea before you actually build anything and end up at that destination?
I know, it's a classic kind of catch-22, isn't it? I spent 20 odd years in digital agencies, and it was all about the ideas. And before that, I worked in McCann Erickson, just a traditional ad agency that had a digital department, and that was all about the ideas. So it did take me a little while, I must admit, to get my head around how on earth can we prove that this is something that people want without showing them anything? It just seems ridiculous. How would you know? And the only way that we found you can do it is to follow those lean startup principles and say, okay, if I really have a problem that's worth solving, and a startup is the ideal way to do it, I need to find people out there who I first identify with a problem, and then secondly, put their hand up and say, yes, I will give you some of my time in order for you to help me solve this problem because it's so painful. And I'll give you a kind of contextual example of that to try and help. If somebody came in and said, Andy, you're going on about these problems worth solving, I think I found one. And in Manchester where you live, the public transport's rubbish, and I think that's a problem worth solving. And I would say, you're right, it is, but it's very big, and startups are not particularly good at solving large, complex problems. Then they're better for bigger, larger institutions. So try and narrow that down for me. Find something that's very niche. If they do that, a couple of weeks later, they'll come back and say, I think I've found it. I've noticed on Oxford Road in Manchester where it's very busy. There's cars, there's bikes, there's pedestrians. When it rains really heavily, a lot of the grids flood. And they seem to flood right over the cycle lane. And I've noticed a lot of the cyclists ride into the road. And I think that's a problem worth solving. I would say, brilliant. You have definitely identified a problem there, but we can prove if it's worth solving by standing on Oxford Road and asking those people, those cyclists, those two killer questions, which is, do you have this problem? They should go, absolutely yes. And secondly, will you give me some of your time while I think of a solution to this problem? They should say yes to that second one. And people think that would be easy for them to say yes, but it's not. Because what you tend to get is, I'm really busy, sorry, I haven't got the time. And when they say that, you start to think, why have they not got time? They're going to potentially be knocked off their bike, but they're saying they haven't got time. And then if they're really honest with you, they'll kind of look around and they'll say, well, to be honest, when that happens, I ride on the pavement. So yeah, if they said they were going to cycle on the pavement, and we would think, no, well, that's brilliant, because you've given us an existing alternative there, and we now have to make the decision whether that existing alternative is so easy for them to perform, whether anything that we give them is going to interrupt that behaviour. But if they don't give us that existing alternative, we can then go away and start to think of possible solutions. And most people will go, well, it's obvious, we'll create an app, and the app will have some nice AI in it, which would take an image of the puddle and decide how big it is and its location, and it would send that data to the local council, who would pay to know which ones to clean. We would go, before we run off and build this thing, let's think of an experiment we can run to prove that they will change their behavior and do what we want them to do. And to do that, we'll say, okay, over the next couple of weeks, please send me as many pictures of puddles as you possibly can. And we probably get 2 or 3. And we go, why? And we'd ask them a question, and they'd go, well, to be honest, when it's really chucking it down, I'm not going to stop, get off my bike, get my phone out of my pocket. It's just not going to happen. And we would then go, okay, before we build something that we imagined, that experiment tells us that this behavior is probably not going to happen. So we think of another alternative, maybe, I don't know, a sensor in the grid, something on the bike. We would go through lots of possible solutions with experiments to prove it. Once you've done that and you have a hold of that, that is a really good indicator that you have something that's worth solving. You've built a user panel. The user panel is engaged with you. Week on week, you can grow this user panel, so I can go to other cities, other busy roads. The council say they're interested in my user panel now. My council is Salford, Manchester, Trafford. We've grown that side of things. Investors get very interested if you can grow your user panels around problems like that. Now it's about trying to find a solution that works, and that obviously has come way further down the line than it would normally do.
And a lot of people listening, even if they've got that killer idea, the other thing that'll be holding them back, of course, is the fear of going it alone and leaving that day job behind and finding that incredibly daunting. So is it just the nature of the game that you have to give up your day job and put all your cash in? Or is it more about building a side gig now? Are you seeing more flexibility?
Well, one of the things that we did is we asked that question, do you have to give up your job and go hell for leather that way? Yeah. And a lot of people in this whole industry say, yes, that's the making of you. That's the risk you have to take. I don't think that's really fair. People do them as side hustles, and that kind of makes sense. It'll take them longer, but they do that. In Nova, what we've tended to do with people is say, okay, don't put any of your own cash in, so that's a financial risk you're not going to have to take. You need to release a couple of days a week from your full-time job. We say 2, it might be 3, but let's just say 2, plus evenings and weekends. And for this first 12 months, we can use your evening weekends in these 2 days to get what we need in order to prove this works. That people who try to do this really like that, because it means that not only have they not spent their own savings, they're keeping an income coming in, which stops them spending their savings just paying the rent, etc. So I think it is doable. And I think you'll find more and more institutions like Nova offering help in that way. Whether it's the way we do it or a different way, paying a small wage, I think you'll find that in this pre-accelerator space, people are trying to help more.
And from your experience and the kind of people that you're dealing with and the startups that you're dealing with, what are the most common mistakes or challenges that you've seen founders making or indeed just struggling to get to grips with?
The first one will be the solution bias, the one I was just talking about. Yeah. You can't help it. It's your baby. You run around with it, and you kind of justify your solution by pointing at loads of different research and not actually asking the people who suffer from the problem. So that's kind of the first mistake. The second mistake can be just not knowing what you don't know. That sounds ridiculous, but you might come across someone will go, oh, have you sorted out the IP? And they go, I don't know anything about IP. Yeah. Okay, is it a UK registered company? Because that means you can apply for tax relief, and I don't know anything about that. So there's this whole area of just not knowing, and it becomes so overwhelming and so distracting from the core thing they should be doing. that their time gets sucked up and wasted there. It's almost as if it'd be nice for everyone to kind of have a basic learning of that. Just the basics, things to be able to understand and continually be learning that and not wasting your time in the wrong areas. What you really should be doing is talking to that user panel and figuring out whether or not you can find a solution for them and not be too wasted with all the rest of it, but it just sucks everyone's energy.
And for everyone listening that's sat at home now and they've got that idea, from your vast experience working with startups, what is the best piece of advice that you would pass on to those people listening?
I would say people say that the good founders are the ones who have attributes of resilience and, can think around problems and those kind of things. I would say that is true, but don't mistake your ability to not give up to the ability to waste time on the wrong thing. People bang their head against a brick wall for a long, long time, thinking it's just about effort. And sometimes it's about saying, this one doesn't work, let's try the next one. Some of the most interesting and most successful founders that I've talked to, this isn't their first gig. This is their 5th, 6th attempt at something. So I'd say that it's better to try lots of things and find one that works than to be dogged with one and not get anywhere.
And if anyone listening wants to find out more information about the kind of work that you're doing, how you can help them, what's the best way of finding you online? And also maybe even contact a member of your team if they're left with any questions after listening to us today.
Yeah, they can go onto our website, which is wearenova.co.uk. There's a mentorship and investment form that they can fill in. If they fill that in, one of my team will email them back and, get in touch with them. If they want to get a bit more personal, we have our Facebook pages and I'm on LinkedIn. If you send me an interesting message on LinkedIn, I will contact you and I'll talk to you.
It's amazing what you're doing here because there's going to be so many people listening all over the world to this Daily Tech podcast, and I do highlight a lot of tech success stories and startup success stories, but I'm quite conscious there's a lot of people that have got their own ideas, but they're just lacking that mentorship. So what you're providing here is just completely priceless. So I'd love to stay in touch with you and maybe get you back on in a few months and see how we can progress this forward. But a big thank you for taking the time and joining me today.
And no problem at all. I will just say as well that we're getting a lot of entrepreneurs who are in stable jobs with families who never took the plunge early enough, but now this is given the ability to do so. Normally you'll find that once people have kind of got past that honeymoon period of just coming out of university, they get settled into a situation where they feel like they can't take the risk. So I'm hoping there's more institutions like Nova to hopefully release a whole set of founders and entrepreneurs who previously just wouldn't take the risk.
And I'm one of those guys as well. I mean, what I'm doing now, I spent 2 years building a side gig, so it did take me longer, but here I am. So I'm proof that it can happen. And just for our international listeners, do you help people all over the world as well, or are you open to helping people around the world?
We are very much open to helping people around the world. We, at the moment, and this is only the short-term vision, because the long-term vision is to actually be in other countries, but at the moment, as long as they're happy to register a UK company because of the different tax reliefs that we apply for, then they're absolutely fine to bring us an idea or a problem that they want solving. In fact, we have people in Pakistan and Ghana and Hong Kong who have all applied because they want our help to do so, and we are helping them.
Fantastic. Well, I do know we've got listeners in 165 countries, so I hope people do reach out and make the most of this opportunity. But again, thanks for joining me today, Andy.
No problem at all.
I love how Nova are partnering with talented people to conceive and scale their digital business models that open up new markets or even disrupt existing ones. And they're co-investing alongside angel syndicates and fund managers to partner with accelerators and incubators too. And through this kind of co-foundry, they're discovering and mentoring entrepreneurial talent and opportunity. And I love how Nova is partnering with founders to complete a trusted co-founder team and then deliver capability, knowledge and experience to conceive and scale those new successful digital businesses. And ultimately, it seems that they enable their founders to leverage their domain expertise and business network to successfully identify real problems and engage with real users, not building solutions to problems that don't exist. And at the same time, their co-foundry team work on creating a solution with a viable business model too. So listening to Andy speak there, it's great to hear how Nova has developed this scalable methodology that increases the chances of investments succeeding. And they make active investments at seed opportunities. And what's the result of doing that? 48.85% of their startups at Nova are now succeeding. But over to you. Do you have an idea for an app, a website, or a tech product that could make a difference, but you're unsure on where to start? And if you answered yes to any of those questions, was today's podcast helpful to you? Or wasn't it? And are you going to reach out and contact Andy? Good, bad, or indifferent, I want to hear your opinions or takeaways from today's show. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. And if you'd like to work with me or check out other episodes or any of the links that we mentioned in today's episode, simply go to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. You find all the information you need. And if you want podcasts, for example, just go to the podcast section. And finally, before I sign off, a big thank you to Andrew for joining me on today's podcast. And I also salute him for being a true believer in the power of dreams, who likes nothing better than chasing them. And last but by no means least, a big thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to tune in to this Daily Tech podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with another great guest who'll be sharing insights that I hope you find valuable and maybe even pick up a few actionable tips along the way too. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.